All right, let's dive right into one of the oldest, most mind-bending questions in all of philosophy. What exactly is the relationship between your mind and your body? I mean, really think about that for a second. You decide you want a sip of coffee. That's a thought, right? It's a desire. It doesn't seem to have any weight or take up any space. And yet, your physical arm, made of muscle and bone, reaches out and grabs the cup. How? How does the mental world actually get a grip on the physical one? This quote just nails the problem, doesn't it? When you really try to visualize what's happening, it sounds like magic. Little, invisible fairies of consciousness? It seems absurd. And that's the mystery we're unpacking today, what some have called the ghost in the machine. Now, here's the thing. This isn't just some vague, fuzzy question. At its core, the mind-body problem can be laid out as a surprisingly clear and deeply frustrating logical paradox. So, the best way to get our heads around this is to see it as a logic puzzle. There are 4 statements, and each one, on its own, seems totally reasonable. But here's the kicker. They can't all be true at the same time. You get what philosophers call an inconsistent tetrad. Let's take a look at the 4 pieces of this puzzle. Okay, just look at these 4. Number 1, the mind, your thoughts, your feelings, isn't a physical object. Seems right. 2, the body is obviously physical. Check. 3, the mind and body interact. Well, yeah, I just decided to lift my arm and it happened. And 4, physical and non-physical things can't interact. You know, a ghost can't pick up a bowling ball. But wait, if you accept any 3 of these, the 4th one has to be false. And that is the logical trap at the very heart of the mind-body problem. So to get out of this logical bind, you have to ditch one of these statements. You've got to decide which piece of common sense you're willing to throw out. And for centuries, this is exactly what philosophers have done, leading to 2 major competing schools of thought. So let's see how these 2 classic approaches try to solve the puzzle by picking a different statement to reject. All right, so in one corner, we have dualism, most famously associated with René Descartes. Dualists say, yep, the mind and body are 2 totally different kinds of stuff. They reject statement 4. In the other corner, we have physicalism, which is pretty popular with modern scientists. They say, nope, the mind is a physical thing. It's the brain. And they reject statement 1. Both of these moves get you out of the logical trap, but as you can see, each one runs headfirst into its own fatal flaw. For dualism, the problem is immediate and, well, pretty obvious. If the mind is non-physical and non-spatial, as Descartes argued, that means it isn't anywhere. One of his critics, the brilliant Princess Elizabeth of Bohemia, wrote to him and basically asked, okay, René, but how can something that isn't anywhere make contact with my body, which is somewhere, to make it move? It's a killer question. This analogy just makes it so clear. You can't get around it. If the mind is a non-physical ghost, how does it pull the physical levers of the brain? How does it get any traction? This interaction problem has haunted dualism from the very beginning. Now, physicalism just waltzes right past that problem. If the mind is the brain, then of course they interact. It's just brain cells affecting other brain cells. Problem solved. But, and this is a huge but, by solving one problem, it creates a whole new one. Physicalism is fantastic at explaining the mechanics of the brain, but it has a really hard time explaining what it's actually like to have a mind, our subjective experience. This is what philosophers call qualia. It's the what-it's-likeness of an experience. I can describe every single physical thing that happens when you see the color red, the wavelengths of light, the retinal response, the neural signals, but none of that explains the actual, private, subjective experience of seeing red. And this is often called the hard problem of consciousness. How does a bunch of physical stuff in your skull produce the feeling of being you? So, we're kind of at a dead end, right? 2 major theories, each with a massive, seemingly unsolvable problem. Well, faced with this gridlock, some philosophers decided to do something radical. They didn't try to solve the puzzle. They decided to flip the whole board over. Now, this quote from the physicist-philosopher Ernst Mach is a bit of a mind-bender at first, but it's absolutely brilliant. What he's suggesting is that maybe physical and psychological aren't 2 different kinds of things. Maybe they're just 2 different ways of looking at the same thing. And this is the core idea behind a theory called neutral monism. It says, look, maybe the basic stuff of the universe isn't matter, and it isn't mind. It's something more fundamental, something neutral. And mind and matter are just different ways that this neutral stuff can be organized. Honestly, the best way to think about this is with a Lego analogy. Imagine you have a single Lego brick. Is that brick part of a castle or part of a spaceship? Well, it depends, right? The brick itself hasn't changed. All that's changed is its context and how we're describing the system it's in. Neutral monism says the universe is made of stuff just like that brick. This chart really breaks it down. Let's take the experience of red. That single element isn't by itself either mental or physical. When we look at it as part of a chain that includes a light source and an object's surface, we're talking about physics. We call red a physical property. But when we look at that exact same element as part of a chain that includes our retina, our memories, our expectations, now we're talking about psychology. We call red a sensation. It's the same piece of the puzzle, just seen from two different angles. So what does this radically different idea do to our original four-part puzzle? Well, it suggests that maybe, just maybe, we've been asking the wrong question from the very beginning. I love this sentence from the philosopher Gilbert Ryle. It sounds like nonsense, right? She came home in a flood of tears and a sedan chair. It's funny because it mashes together two completely different categories of things, an emotional state and a vehicle, as if they're the same. And Ryle called this a category mistake. And the big takeaway from neutral monism is that the entire mind-body problem might be one giant historical category mistake. We've been trying to figure out how a mind thing connects to a body thing without stopping to ask if they're even things in the same category.
Ryle's classic example is perfect. Imagine you give someone a tour of Oxford. You show them all the beautiful colleges, the libraries, the labs, and at the end, they turn to you and ask, "This is all great, but where is the university?" You'd have to explain that the university isn't another building on the tour. It's the whole system, the way all those buildings are organized. The visitor made a category mistake. And maybe that's what we do with the mind. Maybe the mind isn't some extra ghostly thing in addition to the body. Maybe the mind is just our word for the complex organization of the body's parts and processes.
So you see, if this is right, neutral monism doesn't solve the mind-body problem, it dissolves it. It suggests the problem was never a deep secret of the cosmos. It was a phantom, a ghost we created ourselves through a confusion in our language. The ghost in the machine was really just a ghost in our grammar. And that's the powerful and maybe a little unsettling question we're left with. Is this one of philosophy's hardest puzzles because the universe is strange, or because our own concepts have been leading us down a rabbit hole for centuries? It challenges us to look not just at the world, but at the very tools we use to think about it.